Hi, I'm Vanessa Worthington. Welcome to our first podcast. It's called Beyond Floating. I'm here at Art of Floating in Bloomsburg, Pennsylvania, and with me I have Ken Kaplan from Quantum Floats. Hi, Ken. How are you?
Hey, Vanessa. Thanks for having me on your first podcast. I'm coming to you from Quantum Floats in Bedminster, New Jersey.
How long have you had Quantum Floats?
We are just past our 4 year anniversary.
Awesome. So, Art of Floating has been open almost 7 years.
Wow.
Yeah,
Congrats.
yeah. So, in April will be 7 years that we've been floating people around the Pennsylvania area. So, one thing that we did this podcast is to introduce the beyond floating because I think floating is not enough, right, Ken?
Yeah, I came to learn that there's more to floating, although I'd say some of it was kind of the hard way.
Okay. How would you say that?
Well, you know, I'm a lawyer. I'm still a lawyer. I could say I suffer from being a 30-year corporate lawyer. But I say that in jest because I like being a lawyer, and the stress of being a lawyer got me into floating. And then I went around and looked at float centers. I went on the West Coast because I've got family out there. I looked on the East Coast. I visited lots of float centers that would let me look at float centers, and I knew I liked floating, but I also knew that there was something else going on here that I couldn't quite put my finger on. And it took me a while to realize that there's so much you can do with the float experience if you pay attention to what happens when you float. Okay.
Okay.
And I suppose you might ask me, like, what is that stuff there?
You beat me to that question, Ken Kaplan.
Um, See, like, here's the thing for me. It's like, I think that my story is probably similar to like a lot of people's stories. At least it was when I traveled around. I mean, I liked floating, but I also knew that I had stress in my life, lots of stress, and I tried everything, Vanessa. I did Reiki and acupuncture, and I built a meditation room in my house. I went to energy doctors. I did some things that I won't even admit to on this podcast. But I was looking for, I was looking for ways to reduce stress. And for me, what I saw is that it was really showing up as patterns. Like at that point in my life, I'd already been a lawyer for like 25 years, and I'm like, all right, what are these patterns here? And in particular, it's like, why am I getting into the same fights with my law partners as I am with my wife?
Interesting.
Yeah, but back then, if you'd asked me, I would have said, well,
It's two different fights, right?
I'll put it as bluntly as I can, because those assholes don't understand me. What I've come to learn is that I was the common denominator in all of the fights, and so it raised the question of where do those patterns come from? And
Mm.
I came to learn that that's why people come to float. They come to float because they got stressed, and they got stressed because they got patterns and ways to looking at things. And when they go into the tank, they can start to take a look at that. But then, what the heck do you do post tank with those patterns? That's the beyond floating part.
Exactly. Exactly. So I have a similar story. I was introduced floating as go float your stress. I was lucky enough that my parents had a float tank in their house. So, being a single mom of two little ones, they were like, go float, go float. And my first float was actually 20 minutes. I came out and I was like, wow, that was the best hour of my life. My dad's like, no, that was 20 minutes. Get back in there. And I'm like, no, we'll just do it another time. But I kept on going floating because I didn't sleep much because I had a lot of stress, being a single mom, trying to, you know, get up and do stuff and, work and deal with two little ones and stuff. So I the day after I floated, or that day I floated, I slept like I'm not gonna say like a baby because they wake up like every 2 hours.
Sure.
But I just slept like a rock. It was awesome. And I was like, wow. So I went again and went again. And finally, I stayed in for an hour and 45 minutes. And I was like, wow. And I did think about those patterns as well as like I went to a psychologist because I thought I was crazy. I went to, you know, and actually when I went to the psychologist, I found out that it was just patterns, and like
Mhm.
I would see them in the tank, but I didn't like know what to do with them when I was out of the tank. I was like, oh yeah, that's what I do. That's who I am. Deal with
Yep.
it.
Yep.
you know?
Yes.
So the beyond floating, like you said, um, helped me go through like massive changes.
Mhm.
I had to look at why I was so immature and why I was where I was, and like either stay there and feel sorry and be that's the victim of the story, or you know change the page.
Oh, yep. That's really what it comes down to.
Yeah.
Yeah. Thing is, like me, everybody that comes into quantum floats can't see uh, the patterns. Let me say it a different way. Like for me, I was sure that everybody was conspiring against me, or maybe I can say it that the people didn't understand me.
Mhm.
And so I went around all righteously angry anytime I thought someone didn't understand all the immensely great things I thought the grand Ken Kaplan was doing, only to find out that I wasn't quite grand at all. And had I been listening to the people in my life, like my law partners and my wife, had I listened, I probably would have had some nuggets to kind of grab onto in terms of the stuff they were pointing at. That's true with all my clients. It's true with everybody. People can't see it. They are
Mhm.
they are blind to the stuff that goes on in their life. And a good way to think about that is that that's because it's the lens through which they look at the world. So if
Exactly.
you grow up as a poor, pitiful little pumpkin, guess what? You look at the world as a poor, pitiful little pumpkin. No
Mhm.
person, no person that grows up with that wakes up in the morning and looks in the mirror and says, "Today, I'm gonna do poor, pitiful little pumpkin way better than I did it yesterday." They don't. Nobody sees it. So
Well, they don't know that they're a pitiful pumpkin.
no,
And I
they don't.
think that that's why when you float and you can like have you relax, into the moment that, everybody says when they come and float, they wow, that float was really awesome, and it relaxed me, and I just feel amazing, body wise, yeah, but they're not looking at the part where it relaxed their mind, where they grew a new synapse, where something changed in there, that they
Yep.
relaxed that sense or that thought that was actually bothering them. But they relaxed it, and then they came out of the float, and then they went home, and they still have that thought.
Yeah. Uh,
So in 10 days, a week, that thought's going to come back, and they're not going to be able to see like, wow, I'm stressed again.
yeah. Yeah. I think for me, it was a matter of realizing that the tank, in some sense, does nothing. And then in another sense, there's a lot. But let me explain what I mean for that. It's no moving parts.
Nope.
You don't leave.
Other
You
when
don't.
you move around in the
Yeah.
tank.
So whatever happens in there, you can be sure is self-generated.
Yep.
Okay. So then the question, like for me, became, all right, like, well, I'm relaxing in the tank, but what the heck do I do with these things that I'm starting to get a peek at? These patterns, and that's where for me I dove into kind of the research behind it. Especially John Lilly and a guy that has since become my mentor. I think you know him too. His name is John Worthington,
Mhm.
and I wanted to know. I freaking wanted to know what the hell is going on, And I know that Lily's work can be really dense, but that dude and Worthington figured stuff out that I never would have figured it out on my own. But I'm really glad because what I've been able to do here now is not only have a float business, but have the beyond part of like, all right, you've had that experience,
Mm-hmm.
you're accessing those patterns. Would you like a language to learn how to deal with that?
You want a map to put those pieces
Yep.
together for your puzzle kind of thing?
Yep. It's
Yeah.
true.
Yeah. So, um, both me and Ken, what we're talking about is that we have tools that we use that we call seminars. So, both float centers, Ken and I, have worked several years now. I think I've known Ken for about what, 10 years, 8 years, something like that.
Probably close. Yeah.
Yeah, and we've been doing our workshop seminars with John Worthington. That he has shown us, like, he's guided us and taught us a language that can help us deal with our, you know, the simplest things that people stress over, like blame, for instance. Like,
Yep.
blame is one of the biggest things, and in one of our workshops, that's actually the first step of recognizing how much do we blame in life. And I remember one of my first floats that I realized, I was like, wow, I'm blaming my parents for me being me. But I was the one that was making the decisions. They didn't, you know?
Yep.
So, I
So,
mean, and blame is um, a very heavy topic, you know, in a lot of ways, because, you know, how many times do we blame the weather why we don't do things, you know?
yeah. Yep. For me, there was this. I'd even say it was a struggle because like my old world met like a new world, right? So like the Kaplan family, my family is, polite nods and polite winks and smiles and nothing ever gets said, and we fancy ourselves as the most friendly family, except, I know that if you come to my family gatherings, you'll see nobody ever says anything. So if something's on your mind, if something's bothering you,
They're
you
being nice. Yeah.
you
Don't
ain't
rock the
gonna
boat.
get you ain't gonna get a Kaplan generally to tell you that. What
Okay.
you do is you'll hear it from somebody else through it.
Uh-huh.
So, and I, in growing up in corporate America as a lawyer, the same is really true, because I've worked for major public companies and I've seen thousands of people laid off or leave companies without ever any attempt to deal with the bad behavior that gave rise to the layoff, because like people generally think that that's not their province or they don't have the skills to do that. So the dilemma me was that all that baggage with me to the float center, my polite smiles and winks and nods and my 30 years of corporate law experience, never really dealing with people about what was really going on. And then I had to figure out, oh shit, how do I deal with people? Like, what's the way to do it? So I embarked on first like my Ken Kaplan, nice, polite smile kind of thing. But that never made a point to really anybody.
Mm-hmm.
So I had to really re examine what my definition of caring was for people, or what my definition was being a friend.
Mm-hmm.
Because I know from the start, like we talked about earlier, my clients can't see it, Vanessa. They
Mm-hmm.
can't. They just don't see it.
Yeah. I
So, I can pat them on the back and say they're doing all right and keep floating, which I did for a while. Or I can do my darndest to make it so complex for them that they can see the thing that I can see and everybody else can see, but they can't see. And so that was a that was a pivotal shift for me, because once I did that, two things happened to my float center. One, I started to get more people hanging out here wanting to know what I wanted. And two, I had a whole bunch of people telling me to go fuck myself. Honestly, really. Because what I've since found out is that not everybody wants to hear the thing that everybody else can see them doing, but they can't see that they're doing.
Yeah, they're in denial.
So, yeah, but nobody ever takes the time. So they
Yeah.
get like, and like the law firms I've worked at, they get fired and they get let go, and the
Uh-huh.
same patterns show up, and they're in the same, pattern the next job, or they're in the same pattern with the next relationship, on and on and on and on and on and on and on.
Yep.
That's not what I'm doing here. What I'm doing here is, and I think what you're doing there is pretty unique in terms of what businesses are doing to give people a hand revealing what's really going on in the depths of the engine of the business. Right? Would
Yeah,
you say
well,
that?
yes, exactly. And both you and me have taught the first seminar, and we actually enjoyed doing that. It's called the Intro to the Art of Rewriting. There's the 3-pack, right?
Yep.
It's the so what we're talking about, Ken and I, are how we got to see these things or to discover whatever, our endeavors or our scariness or the nice guy or the nice girl or the little sister syndrome that I had. It took us those 3 steps to start to see like a little glimpse, and that's the intro class. Then we did a rewrite, and then program theory.
Yeah. Yep. Those 3 go together.
Yeah.
See,
And that's like and that's what we're talking about, like the beyond floating. That's what we are offering, hand for people to see what they're doing. And those are the 3 steps that, helped me start to see what I was doing.
Yeah. Yep. Me too. So in the intro class, I know coming in, just what we said before, is that people can't see the pattern. Another way to say that is they can't see how a neural program operates in their own thinking. Nobody's ever showed them. Nobody showed me in law school. Nobody showed me in undergrad. No law firm I've ever worked at, a corporation I've ever worked at, ever touched on anything like this. So what I do is I want people to see it, how it operates in their thinking.
Yeah.
Now, I've since found out that that's more than a matter of just explaining the science to them. Although I do that part of it, I've got to actually pull the program out and show it to them.
Oh, definitely. I mean, you can't just explain something without a showing. I mean, I don't think you can learn how to drive without, being shown. You can read books and everything, but you can't really, learn how to drive.
Yeah.
Or
I
cook.
learned one thing the hard way. Yeah, I put myself on the self-appointed lecture circuit of explaining to everybody what I know about neural programming, only to find out that nobody gives a shit. Really, they don't. They don't. And it was pretty arrogantly ugly for a while for me until I said, well, wait a second, maybe really the thing is here. I ought to give people a hand with what I see instead of telling them how they should be. I'll tell you.
Yeah. I don't think telling really actually works. I mean, I tell my kids to clean their room all the time, and it doesn't work. So I have to show them to clean their room.
Yep, exactly.
So what else?
Well, coming to you, it's Tuesday?
Yep.
So I'm over at Quantum Floats. A whole bunch of people coming in later today to float. We tend to be busy in the mornings and sometimes quiet in the middle of the day and then busy again at night.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to teach an intro class this weekend.
Okay.
Them apples.
Oh.
Yeah. Yeah, when really I'm running those, and we're running them once every month. I know you do them with me.
Yep. Once every month. Mostly 3 nights in the middle. Yeah. I think it's like the middle of the week, 3 nights from 6 to 9.
Yep.
Exactly. Yep. So if anybody wants to know more, this is our first episode, our first podcast, our first our first chit chat that we'll be doing.
And if you want to see the basis of, let's say, the science behind it, because we go into this at first in the intro class, check out a video that you can find it on Nova, that science channel. Just look up nova.com and stuff and search for a video that they put out a couple years ago called Memory Hackers. I think you could probably find it on YouTube. I know Netflix runs it once every while. It might be on Amazon Prime. So what you'll see in that is what the latest science shows about memory, or you can call it neural programs, and how to modify it, because that's what we're doing here. That's what we're talking about. Mm-hmm. We're talking about how to take that science and actually show people a tool to how to modify a program, building off of their float experience. Go down in the float, access the program, come out of the float, learn a language and tools in how to change the behavior.
Yep. And so, a program could be as easy as my mom doesn't love me. I'm a poor,
Yeah.
pitiful pumpkin.
Yeah.
So, you
Well,
guys, I'm just wanting to.
well, while we're on this call, I missed a call from my mom. So
Oh,
wondering
okay.
if she said I don't love her.
Yeah.
And I do. But I grew up in a Jewish family, so yeah, there's a lot of you don't love me, you don't call me enough.
Yeah. Okay. Well, if I miss a call from my mom, she's like, "What are you doing? Like, why aren't you calling
Yeah.
me?" So, well,
Good.
thank you so much, Ken. Um,
Hmm. Thank you for having me on as
yeah.
your first guest in the Beyond Floating podcast.
Yeah, we'll be doing much more of these. And we'll put out a link for both Quantum and Art of Floating so you can see our intro class dates.
Yep.
And if you have any questions at all, you can give us a ring or an email or look us up on Facebook. I don't know. It's
Yeah,
easy to
give me a call.
contact us.
I'll happily talk to anyone, tell them how I got here and what
Yeah.
the method to the madness is and why I do this and what I figured out along the way and the mistakes I made and the pitfalls and all sorts of things that I had to learn to get to this point.
Yeah, and it's, we already went through it, so we know how hard it is to just look at one single thing. So
Yeah. Well, that may be a good way to kind of wrap up because that was it's work.
yeah.
Yeah, it's work. I think I look at I had a Marine who came and floated here about a month ago, and he was one of those that went through like a class they call like BUDS, basic underwater demolition and stuff. And like this is like, that's like the top of the top because they're like special forces guys. And he was talking to me about like 250 people went into that program and literally 25 came out. So 225 people dropped out. I was like, well, how did that happen? He's like, well, it wasn't really all that hard. He's like, there was a physical fitness component of it, but there was also, he said, a component of it where he had to deal with the patterns for him that would make him run away for things and not finish things. And he was one of the guys that got through it. So he was really someone who came in here could really identify with what I was telling him that, yeah, these things that seem sort of trivial that are just thoughts, some people put a big load on them.
Mhm.
Make a big do about it. But I know, and I'm hoping to show people that you put the work in, you've got the benefits. So
Exactly.
there's no quick fix. You're gonna work.
And right now, and I'll use this as an example. I've been following the Kobe Bryant news and everything, and he was very inspirational because he did the same thing. Like he knew that 20 years of being in the NBA actually was a commitment. And it was hard work. You just didn't show up. Like you had a commitment and the love of the game and everything. So I think that's how you have to have the commitment to make a change in your thinking machinery. And the first of access is floating, pulling up that program and then being, do I really need this?
Hey, I have a question. It's kind of off topic.
Okay.
Right?
Yeah.
Did you watch the halftime show of the
And
championship game on Sunday, the Super Bowl?
oh yeah.
You saw J Lo.
Oh, definitely. Yes. Latina
So
power.
yeah. Following that, I saw the social media blew up with ranging comments from "they were amazing," which I thought they were, to "how dare
Dare
they
they? Yeah.
on primetime
Yeah.
television." Um, you
I
probably wouldn't know where I come out on that.
Oh no, I definitely know. I want to
Yeah,
be 50 and
yeah,
have and do that.
yeah, exactly. You
Good
know,
for them. I mean, that's an example of, this is me and this is how I'm going to be, and
yep. I've worked my way through a lot of places where
I have to
I want
respect that,
people
man.
to be a certain way, and it turns out, I was all judgy about how things would be, and people get like that, and they have a right to get like that. I don't argue with that,
Yeah.
but do you really want to be telling people how they should do things and not do things?
Yeah, I think moral superiority comes into mind when I saw those comments all over and saying she should not have dressed like that.
Yeah. I mean, who says?
Yeah.
Really. I mean, Adam Levine was shirtless last year. There were no complaints.
Oh no, definitely not in the California across his his chest or.
Yeah. Well, yeah, it might be worthwhile with some people. Get over it.
Go float on it.
Yeah.
So.
Thanks. Thanks, Vanessa.
Thank you, Ken. I will see you next time.
Yep. Thanks
Take
again.
care. Yep.
Later.
Bye.